Okay, so now we're going to look at our second type of study. Our second type of study is an observational study. In an observational study, the subjects are put into treatment or control groups, either by their own actions or someone else who is not involved in the research study. Observational studies compare the outcome variable in the treatment group with the outcome variable in the control group, right? Looking for an association between the two different variables. Right? Observational studies are not useful for reaching conclusions about cause and effect relationships. Right? So just like with our first type of study, our anecdotes, right? They're not useful in drawing conclusions about cause and effect relationships. For the main reason that having very similar groups is difficult to achieve. Right? There could be a confounding variable. Which is basically just a fancy name for some sort of other outside factor, which is a difference between the two groups that could explain why the outcome is different. So if we take a look back at example 1, so instead of an anecdote, an observational study is performed. Two groups, one group who drinks peanut milk and one group who does not, are studied. If more people are cured of gum disease in the treatment group that drinks the peanut milk than in the group that does not, then we might say that, so I'm just going to kind of complete the sentence here. Drinking peanut milk may be associated with improvement of gum disease. But we cannot say one causes the other. So when we're thinking about observational studies may show association, right? But association is different than causality, right? So one may be associated with the other, but we cannot 100% say that one causes the other. So as we're going through and we're thinking about different examples in this chapter, in this section, using the correct terms is going to be very important. So observational studies, we can look for association, but we can't necessarily answer the question of causality. Okay. One more example for our observational studies. So example 2, Chronic poverty can lower your IQ, study shows, is a headline from an online magazine, Daily Finance, reporting on a study published in the Journal of Science. In one part of the study, researchers observed sugarcane farmers in rural India both before and after harvest. Before the harvest, the farmers typically have very little money and are often quite poor. Researchers gave the farmers IQ exams before the harvest and then after the harvest, when they had more money, and found that the farmers scored much higher after the harvest. Right? Based on this evidence alone, can we conclude that poverty lowers people's IQ scores? If yes, explain why. If no, suggest a possible confounding factor. Right, so just kind of summarize that paragraph that we're looking at. Right, before the harvest, the farmers are bordering on poverty. Right, they don't have a lot of money. And in that case, their IQ scores are lower. After the harvest, when they have more money, then their IQ scores are higher. Right? So can we conclude that poverty lowers people's IQ scores? Right? So what we're going to say and kind of start with is no. Right? We cannot conclude causation. Right? So this is observational, right? So this is observational. There could be an association, right? But we cannot include or use the word causation, that one causes the other. Right? We're asked to, if we cannot say that poverty lowers people's IQ scores. We're asked to suggest a possible confounding factor. Possible confounding factor. There's a lot of different things that could be the case here, right? So if we're thinking about these farmers before the harvest, not only is their monetary condition different, maybe their nutrition, right? Because they don't have a lot of money. They may not be eating as well, right? That could affect their IQ scores. Maybe it's the amount of stress that they're under. Maybe it is the weather conditions, right? Who knows? There could be a lot of other different things into play, right? So there could be a lot of other factors that are worse before the harvest, right? And better afterwards. Right? So observational studies, again, they can show us some sort of an association, right? But they can't give us causality. We cannot answer the cause and effect question, right? So we'll throw up in here also in this sentence here, this is observational, right? We cannot establish causality. Just to throw that vocab word in there one more time. Okay. So our second type of study, our observational studies, again, can also not answer our cause and effect type of questions.